All right, well, good morning. We're so glad you guys are here with us today. A couple of announcements as we get started. So you may have seen if you had to go. So we are still having some bathroom issues. They're working right now. We hope to have those resolved by next week. But we don't want to tell you you can't go to the bathroom. So there is a bathroom trailer out the back door back there. If you need to go to the regular bathrooms, go. Just limit the amount of toilet paper that you use, please. I will say, I don't want to blame anybody, but the amount of toilet paper, we're going to have a whole lesson about that, about how much toilet paper is appropriate. But no, they are working downstairs right now, and then we have the bathroom trailer if we have issues again. But we're bringing in another plumber this week and hopefully have that resolved by next week. Also, next week, you're not going to want to miss it. Nathan will be back with us next week. He'll be leading worship for us and sharing about all the great work that they're doing in Malawi and have an opportunity for you to partner with them and the great work that they're doing in Malawi. And if you have not been following all that they're doing with the Contentment Ministries in Malawi, it is amazing. If you guys don't know Nathan was our worship pastor for about 10 years, and then they started a mission organization in Malawi, Africa, and it started with just working with some orphans and stuff in the village, and now they've built a hospital, and now they're like going to like legislature and all this good stuff for the country, and so it's amazing the work that they're doing. So you don't want to miss that to see Nathan next week. He'll be leading worship with us and then sharing some of that stuff. There's also a bunch of stuff coming up as we go into the holiday season, and you don't want to miss that, and so make sure and download the app if Journey is your church home. It's the best way to give. We don't pass plates or anything around here. It's the best way to give. There's also giving stations as well, but also stay connected, sign up for things, and all of that good stuff. If you're new, we're so glad you're here. Even if we never see you again, we're glad you're here with us this week. Stop by the little welcome table on your way out. We have a gift for you just for being here with us. So, last week, if you missed it, we started a sermon series we're going to cover all month long about this idea of being grateful and gratitude, and it fits because of Thanksgiving and then going into the holiday season and all of these things. They want us to stop and pause and reflect during this time. And so we're going to be looking at this idea, but we're going to be breaking it down into different kind of categories as we work through this idea of living a life of gratitude and being grateful for the life that we live. And so this week and next week are going to go hand in hand because I'm going to set up a problem that we all have that maybe you don't realize that you have this week, and then we're going to talk about some of the solutions for it next week. And here's the thing. When we talked about gratitude and being grateful for the lives that we have last week, here and today what we're talking about, I think, is the biggest reason that so many of us struggle with that idea and struggle day to day with those things. And it's not just you guys, it's not just me, it's everybody. But this is not my opinion. This is, we're going to see, just something that's part of human nature that we all struggle with and wrestle with. And so rather to give my opinion of what I think to start with, I'm going to use the words of someone who is much smarter than me. And so we're going to start in Matthew chapter 6, and this is Jesus talking, and here's what he says. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. So here's what he's talking about. We see things, right? Like our eyes are the lamp, okay? So it's how we see, it's how we take in a lot of us for our information as we're able to see these things. And he says if your eyes are healthy, which means you're seeing things in a healthy context, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now, next he's going to jump into something that we're going to talk about a little bit this week, but we're going to get more into next week. And I understand it's a very sensitive topic, so that's why we're going to approach it in a certain way. Here's what he says. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Therefore, I tell you, Jesus goes on to say, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. And then he asks the great question, is life not more than food and the body more than clothes? So he ends with this great idea, is life not more than? Now, for his context, and his culture, them having food to eat and clothes to wear, that was a big deal, okay? Now, most people in our culture today, we don't worry too much about food. I know with some of the stuff going on in our country right now, there are a part of our population that is a little concerned about that. But most of us in this room probably don't worry about those things. And we don't worry about the clothes that we wear. Now, we worry, do the clothes that we wear look good? Or do they fit well? Or those type of things. But we don't worry about actually having clothes on our body. But there is a bigger part to this question, the reason I think that it applies to us. It's living with the realization that while we have food to eat and clothes to wear, so we don't worry about that, is life not more than? And you have to fill in the blank for you as to what we might be talking about. Is life not more than this? And what I mean by that is all of us have this temptation to get hyper fixated on certain things that we believe if we had those things in our life, then we could probably be grateful for the life that we have. And then maybe the word we're going to talk about today, we could learn to be content with what we have. But there's always, let's be honest, there's always this, if I had this, then I could be grateful. And then I could be content. Now, if you're not a religious person or a church person, this is not just like a Christianity thing. This is a cultural problem that we have. And the problem about it is, when we start to break this down, is we all have that thing maybe in our life, or that thing that we wish that we could have, or that life that we see other people living, and we wish we could have that. And what it is we're aware, right? And we're more aware today than in any generation in human history and pretty much anywhere else in the world today. And what I mean by that is we are always constantly being reminded and made aware of what we don't have. We see it everywhere. We're being made aware through social media of what we could look like or what we could have, or this product or that thing. We see it through our neighbors as we see the new cars that they have or the new thing that they got or that type of thing. And here's what you know about awareness. When you're aware of what other people have or what you don't have, all of a sudden awareness fuels discontentment. Because you're so discontent when you see what you could have, where you see what you could drive, where you could live. You see, like I look at other churches and I'm like, man, I'd love to have some high ceilings. Okay, it's a little low in here. All right, I'd like to not always be in a furniture warehouse that floods. Okay, but you see these things, and it's easy to look around and be like, but I could have that. And you're aware, and we're constantly being made aware of what we don't have, right? So here's part of the problem too. So some of us, if we kind of break this down, look at our lives, we've had those seasons. This is a human problem. And so we've been like, if I could just have that, then I would be content. Have you ever finally got something and it fixed it? Anybody? Like you got it, you got that thing that you wanted, that you were made aware that you needed, that you didn't know you needed, right? Like my favorite thing about Amazon now is when you go to like check out, you might also like, I'm like, I would also like that as well. Yes, let's add it, right? But like it's this thing, like there's always this other thing that you could have. And sometimes it works, right? Well, like sometimes you upgrade. Like I upgraded my phone recently. I was using like 4 models ago a phone, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to upgrade and get this new phone. And I got it, and for like, man, I was like, I got a new phone. And then like 3 days later, it was just my phone, right? And there was something else that I became fixated on. And this is true, and we know this because here's why. Because we think that if we feel that need that we have for that item or that thing or that look or that car or whatever the context is for all of us, we feel like it would reduce the appetite we have for more, right? But is that how appetites work? And the answer is no. Because here's the thing about it. When you get hungry, the more you feed yourself and consume, okay, what's going to happen later? You might be satisfied for a little bit, but because you consumed this much, later you're going to also want that much, right? It's the reason you ever done this, like you ever ate so much and you're like, we've all said this, I will never eat again. No. Like 3 to 4 hours later, okay, you're going to be hungry again, okay? And the more you feed an appetite, the bigger it actually grows, okay? And this is the thing about appetites. They're never fully and finally satisfied. Now, I was reading about this recently, and psychologists call this idea that we feel like that if we got something, that it would like fill this need that we have, it doesn't have to be like items, it doesn't have to be stuff. Like maybe it's a certain lifestyle, or maybe it's you look a certain way, or you got that person, or you got that job, whatever it is that is your life more than, Jesus question. Psychologists call this hedonic treadmill. And what it means is, it's this idea that you get used to things in our culture really fast. You buy the new car, right? And for like 2 or 3 weeks, like it's your new car. But then 3 weeks later, it's just your car. You get that raise or you get that promotion, and for like a little bit, like a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, like you got that. You achieved that. You got that. You've answered, is life not more? Yeah, because I got this. But then all of a sudden, it becomes your new normal. And all of a sudden, your mind shifts to something else. Well, I wish I could have that, or I wish I could do that. Now, to flesh this out, to understand this is not a new problem that we face. 2,000 years ago, Paul is writing a letter to a group of early Christians, and he's addressing some of these same concerns and some of these same things that they have in their culture. So in 1 Timothy, chapter 6, I didn't write down my references, sorry. 1 Timothy, and we'll go to verse 6, it says this: "But godliness with contentment is great gain." So godliness, this idea of becoming more like God and living a godly life, with contentment is great gain. It's this idea that like if we could learn to be content, we would gain these things. We would gain a different perspective than maybe everybody else, if we could just learn this idea of contentment. Now, he goes on to say this in verse 7. "For we brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing out of it." Now, we're going to talk about this because this is a big idea. And it's kind of obvious when you look at it, but we don't think about it, and we don't want to rush past it. So think about this. How did you get here? You were born, right? As a baby. Did you bring anything with you into this world as a baby? No. In fact, you were perfectly content when you got here. And here's the thing. We do this in our culture and all over the world, and I understand why we do it. We love babies, right? We just love babies. In fact, some would argue you were most lovable when you were a baby and you owned nothing and you were doing nothing. You had value, you were cherished, and you couldn't do anything for anybody. And you didn't own or have anything. And so you came into this world with nothing, all right? But then something shifts. As we grow into adults, somehow we start to equate our value with things. Our value and our worthiness to be a human being with what we own and what we possess and what our reputation is. And Paul's reminding us, you brought nothing into this world, and then he gives the other side of it. And you can take nothing out of it, right? I do a lot of funerals. I've never seen anybody in the casket with all their stuff like, I'm taking it with me, because it's not going to work. Now, before we move on from this, I do want to bring up a point. The reality is you take nothing out of this world, okay? But you do leave behind some stuff. And when we think about that, like we think about our stuff, like our possessions and our items. And here's the thing, in case you don't know, eventually, and the stats on death are amazing. Every single one of us will eventually die. It's pretty crazy, the stats, okay? And when we die, when we pass away, okay, we're going to leave behind a whole bunch of stuff. And when we leave behind this stuff, our kids and our grandkids are going to go through all of our stuff, and they're going to get rid of almost all of it. And they're going to want nothing to do with most of it. But yet those things that one day people are going to shift through and like take and decide what they want and do all this, those are the things that we've equated our value in life. But here's the thing. You will leave other stuff behind. And the question is, when you leave this earth, what are you going to leave behind besides your stuff? For example, what will the world have gained, if anything, because you were here? And not just a nice flat screen TV or a nice bourbon collection, right? What will the world have gained because you were here? What will the community that you live in have gained because you were here? What will your family and kids have gained because you were here? This taps into something Jesus already told us. He says this, if we have food and clothing and we can learn to be content, to which most of us would say, well, come on, we need more than that, right? Like life's got to be more than that. Paul goes on to say this, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Now, I'm going to put a pin in this idea of rich after I do this next little part, because we're going to tap more into this next week. But here's this fascinating study that came out a couple years ago. So when we think about like possessions and life and the value of life, we think of things often, okay? Not like our reputation and our legacy for what our community or the world or all this, even though those are the people that they make movies about, not the people that had nice cars, okay? And so here's this thing, okay? So they did this study and they said, okay, what would make you rich? So they went to people that made about $50,000 a year, which is a good income, and they said, what would it take for you to feel like you were financially secure, and this idea of rich? By the way, in case you didn't know, if you make $50,000 a year, you are in the top 2% of wage earners in the world. Congratulations, you're rich, and you didn't even know it. 98% of the world would look at you and wish that they could have what you had. So they went to these people, they said, okay, if you make $50,000 a year, what would it take for you to feel like you were financially secure? So the number one answer was around $80,000. So that they could make $30,000 more a year than they would feel like they were financially secure. So these people were like smart. They said, okay, so let's go to the people that make $80,000 a year. So let's go to them and find out what they define as like rich or financially secure. And the people that made $80,000, who you would think, because the $50,000 people said that would be security, they said, no, actually, if I made $100,000 a year. So they were like, okay, so let's go to the people that make $100,000 a year. Do you feel rich and financially secure? And what they found out was that the $100,000 a year people said if they made $200,000 a year. So they went to people that made $200,000 a year. They said, what would it take for you to feel rich and financially secure? And they said, if we made $500,000 a year. Now, did you notice the jumps? In other words, what Paul is saying, what Jesus is talking about, is people who, their first line in their own lives and their definition, people who prioritize themselves above everybody else and their possessions and their acquirement for wealth, he says they can fall into a temptation and a trap. And this is a trap that all of us are potentially going to fall into. Because here's the thing, we don't think of ourselves as rich, but we are. And we often have to think of ourselves not just rich in our possessions and our wealth. There's other definitions of rich in this world. And this is all fueled by this idea of discontentment, which grows us into dangerous places. Now, if you don't believe the Bible, that's okay. So what if you look at life at somebody like that guy named like Christopher Wallace? You guys know Christopher Wallace? He was known by some other names like Notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls. Here's what he says. I don't know what they want from me. It's like the more money we come across, the more problems we see. Right? It's like saying, like, listen, the more we have, it doesn't solve the problems. So Paul goes on to say this. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from their faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Now, here's the thing we see over and over again through Jesus and Paul and really the teachings. Money is neutral. Money in and of itself is not the problem. Because here's the thing. Money can be used for really good things. And money can help in some ways make the world better, make communities better, and solve the problems that some of us face in the world. What they're saying is it's this love, this desire of it, this chasing of it that can become the problem. This feeling like that your money equates to your value in life. That's the dangerous part. And here's part of the problems too. You can't see greed in the mirror. You can't see the love of money in the mirror. You can't see sometimes this dangerous trap that Paul is talking about and Jesus is talking about that we can find ourselves on. So how do you see this in your life? Well, here's a couple of ways to get started. Here's a question. What are you willing to do for it? Here's a better question. Who are you willing to hurt for it? What things are you willing to do that if other people found out you were willing to do for it might cause some problems? And here's a good one. Is there somebody at home or in your life that feels like they're competing with your chasing of it? And if you answered yes or answered any of those questions in an uncomfortable way, is it possible that you stepped into a trap? Now, what fuels all this? Because I want to get back to this. I want to go away from the money piece and get back to really the real problem. It's comparison, which leads to discontentment. Discontentment is fueled by comparison and is always dangerous. And here's the real problem with this idea, this whole comparison thing, right? Comparison will put you at odds with other people, right? It just will, because you'll be comparing yourselves to other people and you will have sometimes this resentment towards other people, and it's not even their fault. It's just because you've put yourself in this comparison trap with these people. And so sometimes the danger of this is it makes us feel certain ways about certain people that's of no fault of their own. The other thing that's dangerous about it is it will make you feel certain things about yourself. We live in a world where you're told by culture, by media, by social media, that you need this. And some of us, me included, we buy into this idea that if we had that, we would be more respectable, more acceptable, and more lovable. And that is a lie. See, the same people that you compare yourselves to, the same people that sometimes we're jealous of or we're envious of, here's what you need to know about those people. They also have a voice that whispers in their ear if they had, and they're looking somewhere else. Because no matter what you have or what you've accomplished, there's simply no win in comparison. So Solomon, introduce him in. So Solomon is considered one of the wisest, and he's also one of the wealthiest men to ever live. And he said it this way in Proverbs 14:30. He says this, "Envy rots the bones." And nobody wants to be rotten, right? But this is where this leads. And so he is like the wisest and one of the wealthiest men to ever live. Now, to give you an idea of how this is, you should study the life of Solomon if you've never did it, right? So like Solomon was so wealthy that like he would throw these parties. And I'm sure that your little rocker ribs on your smoker and your PBRs in your cooler and you throw a big shindig, okay? He threw parties that took weeks, literal weeks. People would just go and they would have to bring in all of this livestock. I mean, there's like this reference in the Bible where he's bringing in all these cows and goats and all of these things for one party. I mean, he threw bangers, okay? And he did this on a regular basis, okay? Listen, I am sure your landscaping looks amazing. When Solomon built his house, he built a forest in the middle of the desert and brought trees from halfway across the world just to line the outside. I mean, this is the life that he lived. There was nothing he could not get or he could not possess. This is the life that he lived. And so towards the end of his life, he's looking back on everything that he's accomplished, not only with his wisdom, but also with his wealth. And so he's writing these ideas. And if you've ever read it, the book of Ecclesiastes is one of the saddest books that there is. Because here is a guy that had all of the potential between wealth and wisdom in the world, and he's looking back not only on the lives of the people around him, but also his own life. And he's realizing that all the wealth and wisdom in the world could not give him true happiness. There had to be something else. So listen to what he says. He's downloading all this. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, he says this, "And I saw that all toil and all achievement sprang from one person's envy of another." So he said all of this busyness that we're about and all of these things. Now remind yourself, this is 3,000 years old, this writing. He's already making this understanding that it's people comparing themselves to each other that is fueling a lot of the choices that they're making. And so all this toil and trouble and all this achievement, it's because one person is looking at another person and wishing they had what they had, or wishing that they had their lives. And so he goes on with this statement. He's going to tell us what he thinks about this. Here's what he says. And I saw all the toil and all of the achievement spring from one person's envy another. This, too, is meaningless. He's like, everybody's doing this, and it's like this meaningless thing. Like we're just doing it over and over again, and if we've equated getting these possessions and getting these things, then that gives us value in life. And he's like, no, this is meaningless. And then he gives us this phrase that maybe you've heard before, but he gives us this phrase, this handle that I would like for us to learn. He goes on to say this: it is like a chasing after the wind. You ever chased after the wind? It's endless, and it's pointless, and there is no finish line. You can chase after the wind all day long. And you can just keep going and going and going. And there is no win. There is no winner in chasing after the wind. There is no peace. There is no joy. And the tragedy of it, it steals from the joy of the accomplishments we've already have. And it steals from the joy of what we've already done. And it steals from all of these things. And he says, listen, you got to catch yourself. Because if you don't, you'll do what everybody else is doing. You'll do all this toil and all this trouble, and you'll do all of these things. And it's all, he says, it's meaningless at the end. And it's like this chasing after the wind. And here's the thing. You and I will catch ourselves doing it if we think like this all the time. Like some of you, you might be looking around and you'd be like, man, I wish I had hair like that. I just wish I had hair, Or, hey, let's be honest, maybe even in church you walk away, I wish I looked like that. Or here's the dangerous one. I wish he looked like that. I wish I drove that. I wish I could live there. I wish I had that. And you catch yourself drifting into someone else's direction, and you catch yourself drifting into someone else's lane. And Solomon will say, it's like chasing after the wind. And he's like, it's meaningless. Now, the word that he uses here for this meaningless is the word hebel. And hebel in Hebrew actually translates to vapor or mist. Like it's just this meaningless thing. So I'm going to use my fun little illustration. This thing has been the best illustration thing I've ever bought. I got it for $1 at the general store. So here's a mist in case you don't know. That's a mist, right? This is a mist. And this word hebel, it's vapor or a mist, which means like you're grasping onto something and it's a mist and it just like slips through your fingers. And you think you're holding on to something and really you're holding on to nothing. Now, Solomon's been through this. So there's a flip side to this story. And he says there's some people that do all of this and at the end of the day, they realize they did it all for naught. But then he goes on, there's another extreme side to this. And he says that there's some people that look at this and they go, well, then I'm just not going to do anything. So he has a response to that. He says, fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. So he's like, okay, so you have one extreme of people that just do all of this stuff trying to compete with everybody else around them. Then you have this other extreme of people that don't do anything and are lazy because they've decided they can't compete with everybody else. So they're just going to give up. And he's like, neither one of these are healthy. So he's going to introduce another option. He's going to introduce us to another idea. He's going to bring these two extremes together. And here's what he's going to say in verse 6. He's going to say this, and I love this. This is one of my favorite verses. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. So what is he saying? You got the two extremes. You got the people that are just going, and they're never going to be fully and finally satisfied. You have the other extreme of people that are just like, I can't compete, so I'm just not going to do anything. So he says, better one hand with tranquility. The word tranquility translates in our language, the way it's used, is just satisfaction. Better one hand to actually be satisfied. Or another way of saying that, better one hand to be content. That you've learned to be content. So here's his point. Why is this so powerful? Better one hand content than these hands striving and pretending and grasping. Because if you're just constantly grasping after things, especially things like a vapor that's just going to go through your hands, where is your satisfaction? Where is your joy? Where is this enjoying of the fruits of your labor? When is this enjoying your life? And perhaps you're not enjoying your life. And I hate to tell you this, if you're not enjoying your life, no one else will. Now, the other thing we have to realize about what Solomon's talking about, and what Paul's talking about, is this. Earlier I said that, and we're going to talk about this next week. If you're in the top, $50,000 a year, in the top 2% of wage earners in the world, so many of us are discontent with our lives. And yet, here's what you have to know. There are several billion people on the planet today that if they looked at your life and they saw you had, going back to Jesus, enough to eat and enough to wear, and you had a house, and you had a car, and you had heat, they'd be like, that would be awesome. You and I are the magazine for people in the world today. You're the ad. But we don't get there mentally because why? All we do is compare. All we do is see what we don't have. So Solomon, the whole book of Ecclesiastes is like this kind of tragic book, okay? And don't read it if you're in a bad mood. But it's like this kind of tragic book. But then in chapter 5, Solomon gives us this one little nugget that's like he sees something good. And here's what he says. Even so, with all of this stuff, I have noticed one thing at least that is good. It is good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work. All right? He's saying, listen, it's good for people to enjoy their life. Go out, eat the steak when you can afford it. Go out, have the drink with your friends. Go enjoy your work under the sun during the short life God has given them and to accept their lot in life. And it is a good thing to receive wealth from God. Listen, money is not the problem. Having a good job is not the problem. This is not like you need to go quit your job and listen, that's not what we're talking about. It's good. Those are blessings. Those are gifts. It goes like to receive wealth from God and a good health to enjoy it, to enjoy your work and accept your lot in life. This is indeed a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they take no time to brood over the past. They're too busy enjoying their life and being content. Listen, you may never be able to enjoy the life God has given you if you're constantly looking over your shoulder, looking into the past, looking around what everybody has. And this exerts a lot of energy, doesn't it? The comparison game, the jealousy game, the envy game. I mean, do you know people that their whole lives is just being envious of other people? It requires a lot of energy to live like that. And that is not what God has called us to or what God wants for our lives. Listen, we talk about this all the time. I love this little illustration. Like, what does the Bible say? It's like a mist. That's your life and it's over. 76, 80 years. And it's done. It's a mist. So enjoy it. Live the lot that you've been given. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your time on this earth. It's an amazing earth we've been given. Here's what he goes on to say. So I told you earlier, envy rots the bones, but here's the fullness of that verse. Proverbs 14:30, it says this, a heart at peace gives life to the body. A heart that finds peace in this world, in their life, the contentness in their life gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Listen, I don't care how rich you are, how poor you think you are, how good looking you think you are, where you live. You cannot compare your way to peace. You cannot compare your way to tranquility. You cannot compare your way to contentment. You can't win chasing the wind. God has given you a life and a race to run, and you need to get in your lane, you need to focus, and you need to stay there. Don't look to the other people for inspiration. Yes, you can celebrate their success. You can look to them for inspiration and celebrate them, but you're not going to waste any more ounces of energy resenting them because they're living a life that you weren't given to live, all right? I love this book. Jordan Peterson has 12 Rules for Life, and here's one of the quotes in this book. He says this, Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. You want to be better? Look at yourself. See how I can better myself. Listen, it's a one-man race or a one-woman race. It's you. It's your life. You got to compare yourself to who you were yesterday and say, I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. Not because of somebody else, but because I want to be better in life, better for my family, better for the people around me, right? Stop using other people as the mirror, right? Not your neighbors, your boss, your brother-in-law, your friends, none of these things should be the mirror. What value do you have? So I got some questions for us to wrestle with, okay? They're going to come up on the screen. Here's the first one. Are you feeling drained from constantly trying to keep up with others? The answer is yes, by the way. Are you letting what others have prevent you from appreciating what you already have? Are you allowing what you lack to hinder your enjoyment of what you already possess? Here's a big one. Who would you secretly relish seeing fail? Right? Are you chasing after something that's unattainable? Did you know that you can't chase the wind and follow Jesus at the same time? Because they're going in different directions and they have different goals. You only get one shot. Don't miss this life. Don't miss the life. Don't miss the life that God has for you. Don't miss what life has for you. You will never experience life fully until you embrace what's right in front of you. So what we have to learn to do as people is learn to be content, to embrace the life that we've been given. That doesn't mean we have to be content with where we are. We can have goals and aspirations and be wanting to make ourselves better, but it's not in comparison to other people. It's for us. It's for our family. It's for our kids. It's for the recognition that one day we will leave stuff behind, right? And it's not your TV or your car or your house. There's other things you will leave behind. And our goal is to live lives that are full. Our goal is to do what Solomon says and live a life where we're so busy enjoying the life that we've been given. We don't have time for envy. We don't have time for jealousy. We don't have time to brood over the past and all of the things that happened, but we're moving forward in this life. So when it comes to us, can we just declare for ourselves, to ourselves, and you ought to say it out loud because I know you are uncomfortable with that, but could you just, a simple mantra in life, I will not chase the wind. It is meaningless and pointless. I am going to live the life that God has given me. I'm going to follow Jesus to the best of my ability to become the best version of myself, the best human that I can become, to follow His will, not what everyone else is doing. Let's pray. Father God, we love you and we thank you. And God, my prayer is for me, as everybody in this room, that we can learn to live in this place of contentment. We have so much. I mean, this whole month is about us learning to live a thankful life. And then we jump right into Christmas, which is this whole time of recognizing all of the gifts that we've been given. And in the middle of all of that, it is so easy to compare ourselves, to become envious, to only see what we don't have and not recognize what we do have, to be discontent with what all of the stuff other people have or the opportunities, and not just to focus on ourselves and be content and live the life that we've had, to enjoy the gifts that we've already been given, the food that we've already been given, the life that we've already been given, the family we've already been given, the opportunities that we've been given. And God, help us just to learn to live a life of gratitude, of being grateful, and realizing that the fuel of gratefulness is to learn to be content. To be content in the life that we've been given. To not compare ourselves to others. To not wish ill for others because they have something that we don't have. But to learn to live our lives. To learn to follow you and to be the best versions of ourselves in light of what anything else around us is happening. So God, my prayer is for just this starting point. That maybe for some of us, it's just like we did last week, just writing a list, 3 or 4 things every day that we have to be grateful for, 3 or 4 things that we are content with in our lives right now, and just focusing and chasing those things, focusing and chasing on becoming better versions of ourselves, which means godliness, more like you, and trying to be less like the people maybe around us. God, help us to realize and see all of the many gifts that we've been given Help us to celebrate, to enjoy our lives. God, you are not anti-joy. You are pro-joy. You want us to live life and live life to the full. And it's going to be almost impossible for all of us in this room if we don't see what we've already been given. We don't enjoy what we've been given and live the life that's in front of us. And so, God, it's going to require strength and wisdom in your Spirit, and so just help guide us and lead us in the ways that you see. So, Father, we love you. We thank you. We thank you for this life. We thank you for this day. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.